everyone, and welcome to Holistic Path. I'm Laura, part owner of Clovers Natural Market, longtime student of herbalism and health enthusiast.
I'm Nellie, and my passion is empowering people to take their health into their own hands. I know a lot about supplements. I've been at Clovers for 19 years, so glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Fee. I am a certified health and wellness coach and herbal enthusiast. I'm here to help people find joy in the journey of wellness and understand how small changes can have big impacts.
Before we go into what we're going to talk about today, I'm just going to give our little disclaimer about who we are and what we do and what we do not do. Let you know that the mission of the Holistic Path is to go beyond the supplement shelf, the TikTok trends, and the one-size-fits-all quick fix approach to health and healing that we are so accustomed to in this internet age, and to instead get deeper into some of the biggest health concerns of our time using our collective knowledge of herbal remedies, supplements, nutrition, and lifestyle practices, and to just generally talk about health and ways that we can improve our well-being through different practices. We're not doctors, and nothing we say is meant to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease, and our goal is not to cure, but to enable life through healthy practices and mindful living. Well, today, this is an episode that's kind of a continuation of our talk on pain management, and today we're going to be looking at a particular type of pain and a really common type of pain, and that is headaches and migraines. And this is a really fascinating one to focus on, because I think when I was thinking about this topic, it dawned on me that it really perfectly represents kind of what we are talking about here with the Holistic Path. Headaches and migraines are very common, and there's lots of different things that can be helpful. Which we'll get into, there's a vast array of things that might be helpful for you, but so often the thing that can be helpful for one person is triggering for the next person. So in order to really help yourself, someone who's having reoccurring headaches or migraines, you have to do the work, do the experiment, get to know your body. There typically isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to headaches and migraines, except maybe an ibuprofen, which has its drawbacks. So just as we're getting into this, just know that when we're suggesting different things that could be helpful, they might not be for you. And so we'll dig into that a little bit about kind of maybe helping you to understand what your headache might feel like and lead you in a direction that could be helpful. But really a big takeaway here is going to really do some self-discovery work about what your triggers are and causes are for headaches and migraines.
Yeah, every headache is different, and everybody's path is different. And if you're going to have any success in feeling better, even if you're working with a really good neurologist and you have chronic migraines, or hormone specialist, or allergist, you're still going to have your own path.
And also, just to note that I think we can put headaches and migraines in this category of pain that's kind of minimalized, where it's like, oh, it's just a headache. Headaches can be very debilitating, and because they are kind of marginalized in this way, where they're not considered to be a big P pain, like you have a broken leg kind of pain, but they can be very disabling. They can interrupt what could otherwise be a fantastic day for you. They can send you straight to bed. They can make it so you can't concentrate and focus. So it's not a small P pain. It can be a big P pain, especially because they can be so idiosyncratic that it's really hard to get to the heart of what's happening, and you can feel really disempowered if you're having reoccurring headaches and you cannot figure out why. So just want to put that note out there that this is a big thing for a lot of people. There's so many people who have headaches very, very frequently and just consider that to be their fate in life. And maybe to some extent it might be, but I do think there's things that we can do to help mitigate some of the more severe side effects of chronic headaches and migraines. To start off, we'll just talk about some of the big categories of headaches, because there's different types of headaches, from the most basic and probably the most common, which is what's called a tension headache. It's like a tight muscle feeling in the neck, shoulders, scalp, jaw. They can feel dull or achy. They kind of spread forward. Another big category is migraines, which is a type of headache, but it's also different than what we call a standard headache. It's like a throbbing or pounding pain. It usually occurs on one side of the head. This is a headache that also comes with maybe nausea, sweating, sensitivity to light and sound, the kind that can just make you need to go lie down because you just cannot handle any sensory input whatsoever. There's often neurological conditions behind migraines, and they're just generally a lot more severe than a tension headache. And then the third big category is going to be your cluster headaches, which these are kind of shorter episodes of intense pain that often have like an ocular focus, a focus on the eye. You might have a drooping sensation in your eyes, some discharge from your eye, a runny nose. And they're usually short in duration, maybe like 15 minutes, but might come back several times a day for several days in a row. They're more rare compared to migraine tension headaches, but they are incredibly debilitating and frustrating because it's hard to figure out what is causing them for a lot of people. And you'll try something that a friend recommends, or you'll hear something online, and often with no relief. So just putting that out there, it can be, you really sometimes have to try a lot of things out to find something that's going to be helpful. There are some studies that suggest that cluster headaches can be related to low melatonin. So if you haven't tried that route, something just to know, it could be related to that.
I think we automatically assume that there has to be some kind of medical diagnosis, at least for some people who experience recurring headaches, migraines. And I think sometimes we underestimate the role that stress plays in that, and that tension can be the cause, or the way that we deal with stress can be the cause of that headache. For me, when I was a teenager, I would literally get migraines and headaches multiple times a week, and I did not have very effective ways of dealing with stress. High school, I know a lot of people are like, it's high school, what's stressful about it? But it was a very, very stressful time. I wasn't eating the best, and I would notice that when I got my headaches, I would feel this tension here. Mm-hmm. And just simply unclenching your jaw worked miracles for how often I was experiencing those. Yes, I still had to take care of, or pay attention to rather, how I was eating, but we carry a lot of that tension and stress in our muscles, and just finding ways to relax those muscles can really help a lot when it comes to headaches and migraines.
I think for me, mine have typically been hormone headaches, but I did have cluster headaches when I was little. And I've had sort of vestibular headaches, which cause some vertigo. I've had abdominal headaches where I'm just vomiting. I've had occipital nerve migraines, which is on the outside of the head. So I've experienced different types of pain around my head. And in the past few years, maybe 5 or 6 years, when it's really bad, when it sort of like grips a little harder, because they're not always just like, oh, it's bad. It can come on and you feel it coming on, or you get a visual sort of aura. I will say to myself, what was I thinking just before this happened? And not to shame or blame or do any sort of my fault I have headaches. I would never do that to someone. But what I'll notice is that I would have had a thought that caused my shoulders to go up, where I was holding my breath. And sometimes it's about the headache, like, oh crap, here we go. And just like the tension of like, oh, I'm 12 hours gone, 24 hours gone. And sort of like being like, okay, undo that, what that thought did to your body. And then take it one step at a time. Get yourself together, do your tools. So this deep breath, breathing is getting oxygen to your brain, and noticing the tension in the body and where it's at.
As I think with every single episode we do with Sleep Path, we're going to identify stress as one of the key factors to what almost anything we're talking about, exacerbating the issue. And stress is huge for headaches. And I think sometimes you can hear that, or I have in my life, if I am faced with something that's going on with me, is one of the biggest kind of indicators or risk factors. It's a high level of stress. I feel a little defensive about it because it can seem a little bit like what you're saying is, this is, you brought this on. But let's face it, life is stressful. We can't avoid stress, and most of us live under undue stress, trying to do too much in our lives, that we feel like we have to do, and often we have to do. We have a lot of things that take our attention and that we have to stay on top of: our bills, our kids, our health. Well, my goodness. So we have overworked brains and frazzled nervous systems, and this is just something to be aware of and not to place blame on. Because if you're aware of it, then you can take some proactive measures to relax yourself and to use that knowledge as part of the protocol, where you're focusing on herbs that might be relaxing, taking a hot bath, even if it's only for 15 minutes, removing yourself from a stressful thought, taking some deep breaths, noticing that stress response. I didn't really have headaches most of my life, but it was something I could not identify with. When people would say they had a headache and they couldn't come, I was like, what's that? Kind of. Until I got Bell's palsy in the left side of my face that was brought on by shingles in my ear, which we could do a whole episode on that.
We will.
Because Nellie's also had Bell's palsy. And since then, I get kind of, the description for a cluster headache sounds the most similar, but it really has to do with that nerve right there in my face and it being exposed to excessive cold or wind, or even if I'm sleep deprived, or if I'm stressed. Even if even if I'm stressed in a positive way, which by that I mean I'm going on a trip.
Overexcited.
I'm
stressed.
Yes. Yeah, but it's taken a lot of planning. I didn't get much sleep the night before because I'm excited. Everything's new. That is what can set off this headache that can be very debilitating. And then it's a double bummer because I have a headache and I'm in an awesome place and I'm like, but it comes with this visual sensitivity where it's almost like I can't make things out very clearly. So it's really reframed my thinking about headaches, and now I'm gone from a person who never had headaches to a person who has to know that certain things are going to contribute to a headache for me related to this nerve image in my face, which I can always see when I watch these videos, by the way. That's what that is, if you've noticed it. So there are many underlying causes to headaches, and some of them might be really beyond our control, including genetics, environmental factors, including pollution, air quality. Maybe you work in an environment that has bright fluorescent lights that are aggravating. You're on a computer all day long. Even strong smells and changes in the weather. Seasonal shifts can be a big trigger for a lot of people for onset of headaches or migraines. Different medications that you might need to be on, including birth control, hormone therapy drugs.
Both of which can help headaches.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Back to our point.
Yeah.
True. Hormonal changes just in general can be a big trigger for women. A lot of women have migraines as part of their PMS symptoms. There's also headaches and migraines associated with perimenopause.
And ovulation.
Yeah.
If you keep a calendar as a woman, you might find that what you thought were environmental or tension or some other type of headache, you might find that they are related to hormones when they're on a calendar.
Absolutely. Yeah. And keeping a headache journal just in general is a great idea. Really, if you have any sort of chronic recurring issue, keeping a journal where you're keeping track of what's going on, what I eat, where am I in my cycle if you're a woman,
What the weather's like.
it can lend a lot of information, and from there it might help you identify like, oh, well, maybe this herb that I know helps with progesterone levels might be something worth trying. It can get you closer to something that can be helpful in this wide world of suggestions that might not have any benefit for you. Of course, dietary issues, including not eating enough. If you're an intermittent faster, beware that if your blood sugar dips too low, you can have headaches. You can also even get lightheaded and get fainting spells. You want to make sure you're meeting your caloric needs and your hydration needs.
And we're not going to list all the food triggers that can trigger headaches. We could, but you could become very scared of eating or drinking anything.
So what I would say is, again,
Alcohol, in excess especially, nitrates.
yeah, histamine-rich foods. For some people who have histamine sensitivity, I find that for me, high sodium foods really can be an aggravating factor for headaches onset. Also, high sugar foods. Caffeine, but then again, caffeine can help relieve a headache. It sure helps me.
Caffeine withdrawal.
And the cycle continues. So keeping that food journal can really can really be helpful. If you go back to our episode we did just on pain in general, we talk about the anti-inflammatory diet, and that's a pretty good suggestion for headaches too. And this again comes back to knowing your own body. That's really the key here. If you eat something that everyone tells you is fantastic for you and it's supposed to help you a whole lot and make you feel great, and it does not, that's your truth.
And a note on that, since we're talking about our health being a path, knowing the body and knowing how your body reacts to things is also being sensitive to how our bodies are changing. All of our cells are new. Every day we're making new cells, and we move from place to place, so our environment changes. There's a lot of things that can change about your headaches if you think you're going to suffer chronically forever, including your neurologist might be introduced to a new drug that actually works, or Botox, you might discover that works for you. So knowing yourself and also being aware that you're going to be changing and open to the path taking you toward health, rather than like, no, this is me, this is how it is, it's always this way. It can be so limiting and create so much more stress and illness ultimately. Even though sometimes we do have to say that to people, because if you have unseen pain, people don't know what you're talking about.
You bring up this really important point that I think happens a lot, where we can become too identified with our symptomology and in a certain way attach to it. And so if you're a person who has had chronic recurring headaches and migraines, you can kind of take that in subconsciously as just a true thing about yourself. It really does limit your ability to resolve it. You kind of identify with it, and that is very normal. It's very normal for us to identify with our pain patterns, but kind of just reframing it a little bit in your mind as a person who currently experiences headaches, but that's not who you are, could actually open up the brain, I think, in a way that is profound to healing. Kind of letting go, detaching, and I think headaches, because they're so mysterious and people feel so lost in the woods on how to solve it, we do take it on as identity in a certain kind of way. Much like other mental health issues, where we can really come to feel like you are this ailment that's afflicting you. Just a little philosophical note there. But the list of foods that could be triggering is actually so long. For some people it might be onions, for some people MSG, for some
The histamine list is long.
Yeah, honestly every single food has pretty much some histamine. Histamine's a part of life. So if you are the person who already know that you have a histamine sensitivity, maybe your skin is really prone to just kind of hive-like reactions, you have gone on a low histamine diet and this helped you, I'd like to suggest there's something else going on perhaps there that's causing this histamine sensitivity, and really looking at the immune system might be something worth thinking about. This kind of having maybe an overactive immune system, and how do we work to heal that would be a good kind of exploration point there. So the food list is huge. Keeping that journal can be really valuable for that, because that's pretty much the only way for you to figure out what is true for you. For a lot of people too, we talked a little bit about this before the episode, Nellie, the gallbladder and liver related headaches that can come from eating these rich foods that are high in fats, maybe even they're beneficial fats, but it's quite rich, and can cause this bilious feeling, nauseated feeling. And if you're kind of prone to that kind of feeling, and also prone to like a throbbing, kind of hot headache, then it might actually be related to your gallbladder and liver. And you might think of actually focusing on herbs that are going to be helpful and supportive to your liver and your gallbladder. So again, paying attention, what you're eating, how you're feeling, and also what the headache feels like. And for example, if you have a headache that's brought on because it is cold outside, finding things that are warming could be a good place to go. So you might then have ginger tea. But if you have a headache like the one I just described, where it kind of feels hot and it's throbbing, you might need some things that might cool you down, like chamomile.
Or even a cold pack. An ice pack. Yeah.
So there's going to take some knowing and some exploration there, and that sounds daunting, but it also can be a real
Empowering.
Really empowering, and a point of joy and exploration. Of course, there's all kinds of things too, like head trauma that can really be hard to deal with and can cause recurring headaches, nerve conditions, neurological conditions, vitamin deficiencies. Basically, there's a lot of things that can cause headaches. So again, keeping track. How much did I sleep the night before? What medications am I taking? What's the weather like? What's my diet like?
Have I been active
Mm-hmm.
physically?
And so I would like to add, you ladies talked about like if you're experiencing chronic headaches or any chronic illness, journaling being great for that. I would also encourage any and everyone to start a journal, because that mindfulness and awareness is going to help, even if you have those sporadic headaches, even if it's not a headache. That awareness of self is going to make you feel more in tune with yourself. It's going to make you more trusting of yourself, as opposed to looking externally for validation in what it is that you're feeling. Because you can start to piece together patterns. You can have a great day without any symptoms whatsoever. And especially for women, with all of the swings that we go through as far as our hormones in our 28-day or so cycle, every week there's something different happening. And it can make you feel out of body when you're not aware of these things. It can make you feel alienated within your own vessel. And something that journaling did for me on my journey to finding what kind of triggered me having headaches, what triggered nausea for me, what triggered anxiety even from certain foods, was understanding that I didn't need to hear from 10 different experts, especially in the day and age that we live in with social media.
Yeah.
You can scroll for hours and hours, and we can talk about how scrolling for hours and hours can contribute to those headaches. That's a whole different episode, but we have the tools. We know ourselves better than anyone externally will. We just need to spend more time with ourselves. So journaling we can really look at as a preventative action to take before something comes up and you need to figure out and you're in a rush of, okay, I need to be diagnosed. I need to know what these symptoms are related to. It can be an accumulation of things. So journaling, just whether you're having a good day, having a bad day, that kind of mindfulness and awareness of self is going to help you exponentially in every area and facet of your life. I feel like it's very beneficial.
Yeah, and I'm not a journaler. I have, as a child, had my journals read.
Oh no!
Oh, yeah.
But I like the idea of having a planner, a day planner, with enough space to just highlight things. And then it's almost like you have a chart, like of month after month, so you could start to see patterns, particularly as women. But men have some sort of flux as well, and we all have seasonal fluxes with nature. So even if you're hesitant to getting to know yourself through journaling, get a good planner, and you might open a door to journaling, to where you can move beyond that and get to know yourself.
Yeah, and it can really be super minimalistic. Just headache today, feels like crap, angry that this is my life. It doesn't have to be a haiku, or maybe it could be though. And just that practice can be this release, this emotional release that also helps let go of some of the tension that's gripping us inside of our brains. Well, let's dive into some of the kind of different approaches to managing headaches that we're aware of, including supplements and herbs and some lifestyle approaches. We talked about, of course, already tracking the triggers in a headache journal or in a chart. There's a host of nutritional supplements that also might be worth trying. Do you want to talk about a few of those?
No, we go lifestyle first.
Okay.
We're gonna go free first. And some people get intimidated by supplements, or they'll go to them as a last resort because you're investing money in something you may not know a lot about, or there's a lot of things that you can do before that and maybe get a ton of benefit.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those.
Well, the first place that I would kind of start for anyone that's new to the practice of mindfulness, there's this thought that you have to stay focused on one thing, and the moment that you break your focus from that one thing, you failed at the practice of
The stress.
Yes. Oh, here it is. Well, it's not going to go away. It's really a practice of sitting with it and getting to understand where you're feeling that in your body. So one thing that I would recommend is a body scan. And it's kind of a form of meditation, but it's literally you just sit still if you want. I started with laying down, which is very relaxing as well. That's going to relieve some stress. But just closing your eyes, deeply breathing, focusing on your breathing. And once you're able to focus on your breathing, really paying attention to where you feel any sort of tension in your body. And it's not something that happens overnight. It is a practice that takes time, but you will start to identify, okay, my shoulders are lifted. That could be the source of why I'm feeling this tension in my neck. That could be the reason why my jaw is clenched. And it will help you identify, like you said earlier, Nellie, when something is a precursor or what was happening just before that. It really makes you more aware of everything that's happening externally, but also internally in a moment in time. And I always like to do a body scan before I journal because you get a lot of insight from doing so. And it doesn't have to be a long practice. You can literally do it for 1 minute. You can start with sitting in your chair and just literally closing your eyes and sitting still. But over time, you're going to learn your body, what is your net zero, and you'll be able to work from that. We underestimate stretching when we talk about yoga as one of the lifestyle practices that can really help with headaches and migraines. We think that it has to be a $200 yoga class, and it really doesn't. It's really simple, mindful movement, and knowing your limits and boundaries when you're doing that is really going to help you gauge and really help mitigate any stress which may be leading to migraines.
Can I say something that just came to mind? Applying what you're saying when you're having a headache may sound like an impossible thing,
That is scary.
but the sort of gift of the headache, which is a horrible thing to say, but the gift of the headache is that you can't do anything. If you have a migraine, you can maybe maneuver for a while, but eventually you have to shut down. And a mindfulness practice can be a form of this, okay, headache, you're here, sitting with yourself, doing a body scan, doing those deep breaths, getting that oxygen to your brain, and literally taking your attention, which is so consumed in the pain here, out of your head onto your body, is a pain management technique. So,
I should have added that. This is not something I would recommend doing while you're actively having a migraine or a headache. These are practices that can help you with managing the pain as they come on and kind of understand what are precursors and what's happening before you actually come to having a headache.
but if you have a headache, you need to start deep breathing. You need to scan your body. You need to be calm. All of these things were in the society that were like, push through it. Take a bunch of drugs and keep going, or take the drugs that help you and fall asleep and like, but there's a little window where you can practice awareness.
And it doesn't take a long time, which is the point I really wanted to get to. So those are very, very helpful. And also the process of journaling can sound very daunting. Journals have come a long way, where you can find you a journal that helps you track what you're eating, that helps you track healthy habits, and there's something euphoric about being able to fill in a bubble saying, I did something that feels good for myself. I have this headache. I've had 5 days of these headaches, but this is something that took my mind off of the headache, and mindfulness can do that, just taking your attention to something else as opposed to focusing on the pain. And really making space for the pain, not running away from it. You really have to actually sit with it. And at that point, that moment of awareness is when you're actually able to do something about it. But you have to come to that awareness first before you can find actual solutions.
Give the pain a hold.
It's like having a curiosity versus an antagonism.
Yes.
And just that language, like when I frame something that way, I feel a more of an open feeling in my body. And that curiosity, if you practice it, continually, then it's easier in the moment when you have a migraine, like, oh, there it is. What does that feel like? Oh, it's kind of cold, and there's a lot of, kind of twitching here. It's like, well, that maybe I need something warming, and maybe I need something to relax my muscles, and that helps you toward a direction of healing because you're curious as opposed to just like, oh, there it is again, the terrible thing,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Um,
But it is a messenger, so
Yeah.
starting there
yeah.
allows you to
And
figure out what the
pain
message
is curious, and our bodies are curious. And it's fascinating once you sort of adopt the mindset of, instead of, oh crap, I'm in a battle. Oh my, this is interesting,
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What is my body screaming at me for?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's something that is very hard for you to give, which is like, I need a break.
Yes.
I need a break from everything that's weighing me down. It's easier said than done, you know, and also it can be very hard if you're at work and you have a migraine to have to keep going. It's very natural for the desire to be to just want to suppress it. And so that's a reality, you know, but if you're at home, you're in a place where it's safe to do so, and you have the space, a curiosity practice can really yield some interesting information. Another, you know, simple and almost too simple thing to consider when you're having a headache is, do you need a snack? Do you need a drink of water? So often that is my first response. If when I'm having a headache, I'm like, I'm gonna get some water. I'm gonna drink some water. Maybe put some extra electrolytes in there. Maybe have some coconut water. Like really just replenish those vital fluids. That can go a long way. And just a little snack can really help too. Something healthy is great. Some berries, especially if it's in the summertime and it maybe is like a heat-related headache. You know, in the winter you might have a little bit of ginger tea.
Some toast with ginger powder on it and honey. That's my go-to.
Amazing.
Yeah. Instead of cinnamon toast, we have ginger toast.
Oh,
that's
that's
very helpful.
Trying that soon. That's a great idea. You know, so just these simple little acts of caretaking for yourself or for your child if you have a child. Applying hot or cold compresses can really help a lot. Knowing which one is going to work for you is again about that exploration, because some headaches really respond well to a hot compress and some don't, and vice versa with the cold. Essential oils are also a great category of therapeutics to look at for headaches. There's a lot of relief that can be found in essential oils.
Some are hot and some are cool.
Yes, yeah.
The most common relieving one is peppermint oil.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I go to.
Yeah. I use hot oils. I had Bell's palsy on the right side, and I'll use warmer oils behind my ear where the trigeminal nerve gets sort of compressed. And the warm oils increase blood flow there. They do mitigate pain. But I'll put peppermint oil on my temples, and sometimes the back of my neck. And so I'll have like ginger oil and capsaicin, which is pepper, behind my ear, and then I'll have cooling stuff. Other places, just don't get it in your eye. Don't get any of them in your eyes.
Yeah.
You will be totally distracted from your headache.
And if you're kind of confused on how to figure out, like, is this hot or cold?
Start with pepper.
Yeah, you can start with peppermint. It's a cooling herb, but it has wide appeal. But you know, if something feels kind of like it's like throbbing, it's like pulsating. That's a good idea for something that's going to be kind of cooling. If it feels like nerves twitching, that's when you might want to bring some warmth, like some ginger. Do the experiment on yourself. Go slow. A lot of nerve-related issues really respond well to warmth. Nerves like to be nice and warm and bundled up. A lot of tension-related issues, like if you know stress is a trigger for you, cooling herbs like lavender tea or lavender essential oil could be really fantastic, and peppermint too, which is also relaxing to the nervous system. And you can put those on your compress. You can put those in a diffuser. You can make just a cup of tea with these herbs and just put your face right there and inhale. Take a hot shower and put some peppermint oil on a cloth and just stand there. Eucalyptus can also be great, especially if you have allergies too that are contributing.
Sinus headaches are big,
Mhm.
and you can do a eucalyptus blend with peppermint, hyssop. Breathe that in, and I've even had that open up my station tubes just in the vapors from either a fresh like tea sort of
or
mix.
steam.
Steam, yeah, exactly.
It also relaxes you. All these things are relaxing too, so they have a lot of benefits.
Let's talk supplements, because oftentimes there will be a nutritional deficiency underlying some types of headaches. And these are migraines that people have frequently. They don't seem to have a trigger necessarily. I've talked to people who say they have a migraine 4 or 5 days a week. And that it's worth getting some magnesium and some B2, which is riboflavin, and maybe some herbs as well, but starting with the nutrients that are commonly known to be deficiencies of people with headaches. There's a ton of types of magnesium. I think the original studies were done with magnesium oxide, which is interesting because it's not super absorbable. It does facilitate movement in the bowel, which is again back to this head-bowel connection, and headaches do change the way we digest food. It's interesting. So you could start with something like magnesium oxide and see how that works. There are more specific magnesiums now that have been chelated or bound to amino acids that help with absorption. One that's particularly promising for mental stuff, including headaches, is magnesium L-threonate, which crosses the blood-brain barrier. Magnesium is essentially relaxing to tissues. So you take any magnesium, it's going to help with a tension headache, hopefully, or at least maybe prevent a tension headache if you're deficient. It's very easy to be deficient because you can sweat it out. So you could experiment with different types of magnesium. A B complex, the B vitamins are critical to your whole nervous system, and your brain is your central nervous system. I would recommend a B complex that's methylated, so you're getting the high quality Bs that are very usable, absorbable. Some things that increase blood flow and circulation in a very gentle way. Coenzyme Q10 is an antioxidant that helps the actual heart muscle. It helps with urine, short-windedness. Kind of amazing.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily have a deficiency of CoQ10, your body produces it, but if you're on a statin drug, you would. It keeps you from producing it. Some other things that can be helpful for all of what we're talking about, omega-3s in the form of flax oil, fish oil, any other vegan omega oil can be helpful. If you don't get enough omegas, your brain doesn't function right. The synapses between your nerves kind of short circuit, and you need omega fatty acids for your brain. They also decrease inflammation. There's a host of herbs, which Laura will talk about, that reduce inflammation.
Yeah.
And most NSAIDs, most over-the-counter drugs are just reducing inflammation with side effects.
Yeah, in a really quick way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also I always ask people when they come to the store with a headache, or when they talk about headaches, is how do you sleep? Do you sleep? And finding something that will help them get good solid sleep so that their brain functions better during the day. They're less sensitive to everything that we have to face in our waking hours. I like a very micro dose of melatonin, like 200 micrograms is great for me. People take higher doses and do great. It's another thing where that's my path, and I've tried other doses, and right now I do the tiny bit.
Yeah, the melatonin is another one to really know thyself as you explore melatonin. Is worth trying, especially for migraines and cluster headaches. There's been some studies that show that if your body's not creating enough melatonin, then it can be a potential cause of these types of headaches. But for other people, taking melatonin can lead to headaches the next day. So
Start tiny.
Yeah, start tiny. Most people take way more melatonin than they need for way longer than they need, unless there has been a particular reason why you have been told to take melatonin. You know that your body's not producing enough for whatever reason. Really going below 1 milligram, just like half a milligram, is a good place to start. And if you find that it makes you really groggy, gives you nightmares, you might not need any more melatonin. If you're like me and your natural sleep cycle is 10 hours, you probably have enough melatonin. So if you are the sort of person who you could sleep forever, this isn't you, but if you wake up a lot in the night, if you're very sensitive to light in the night, and you also have headaches, well, you might consider melatonin in a small way.
You could get a liquid and just do a drop of a dose where you're supposed to take a quarter teaspoon or something, where it's a fraction, and just see how you do.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this up by just talking about, just about 5,000 herbs that might help you.
Some of them we have in formulas.
Some of them we have in formulas. And really, I just want to say this. I talk a lot about single herbs to kind of help people understand their uses and their actions, but I really like herbs in formulas. So, again, kind of knowing what type of headache you're having, the symptomology, what your triggers are, kind of the energetics. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it kind of mucusy? Is it really dry? These sorts of things can help you kind of narrow in on some herbs and some formulas that can be helpful. And the way I'm going to talk about these herbs, I'm going to talk about herbs in different kind of categories of action and the ways that they could be helpful. And just as I said at the beginning of this episode, go slow with any herb that you try, because for some people, the herb that helps one person can be the trigger for the other person. So the first, for example, the first category of herbs I'm going to talk about are going to be the things that really help to bring circulation to the brain and to the tissue. And these can be fantastic for for headaches that are come from stagnation, from not getting enough oxygen, enough nutrients to the brain, but could potentially exacerbate headaches that already come with too much stimulation.
Or like
triggers.
post-workout headaches or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
Really worse.
Yeah, if what you need is something for stress relief, is something to kind of mitigate the intensity that you're feeling as far as your
Sensory.
Yeah, if every single light in the room is bothering you, then maybe you don't need a circulation booster. Maybe you need to turn the lights off and get that lavender oil, things that are going to calm and cool. But, for many people, things that can help bring nutrients and bring blood flow to the brain can be helpful, especially if you take them on a regular basis as opposed to just in the moment. Some of these things can be helpful in the moment. One that is a really common herb that you might even have in your garden, and if you don't, might plant it there because it's pretty easy to grow, is rosemary. And this is another, I love including herbs like this when I talk about herbal remedies, because so often we're wanting to find out what's the most fantastic herb from far, far away that's hard to get and has these magic, amazing properties. But so many of the herbs that really have potent action are very simple and very common, and rosemary is one of them. It has kind of broad anti-inflammatory properties, so it's just a general good anti-inflammatory. And it's really great for swollen sinuses as an essential oil, so it's another essential oil that you could add to your compress, to your diffuser, and it's great for bringing circulation to areas. Rosemary oil is fantastic. You can rub that on your temples, away from your eyes.
Also, what I do, and I was doing this for peri and menopausal induced hair loss, particularly post-COVID stress, but also I had COVID once. My hair was very thinning, and I got some rosemary oil. Yes, it was a TikTok trend. And I keep it in my shower, and I get my hair wet, and I put some drops on my part, basically, and then I get my shampoo and I rub it in, and it smells so good, and my sinuses are happy, and it's like a spa in there.
Yeah, another one, Nellie, I also mentioned using cayenne. Cayenne can work really, really well, especially for cluster headaches. Again, you want to be careful. I would not use cayenne essential oil or cayenne products right after you get out of the shower. Your pores are way too open. You will burn. you will not be able to get rid of it for a while. So go carefully. Cayenne is also just a great pain reliever. First you feel the heat, and then it actually has nociceptive properties, so slows down nerve communication so that you feel pain less. It just dulls your sense of pain. So that's a fantastic one. Another surprise one that I'll put on the list is kudzu, the invasive plant from Asia that grows all over the south. It is rich in antioxidants and is this powerful vascular dilator, so it really opens up the blood vessels and can increase blood flow to the brain. So again, If you are the sort of person who has headaches that come with brain fog, they feel stagnant, they feel cold, you feel slow, you feel this kind of dull, cold throb, this could be something to consider taking. It's the only one of the only herbs that I really saw some studies on that had some pretty good results. 70% of patients in the study who had cluster headaches saw improvement with kudzu. And nobody's talking about kudzu.
No.
So,
although the macrobiotics still use it, I think,
Yeah.
like, in the morning with a little ume.
yeah, it's also rich in phytoestrogen, so it can have mitigate some of the perimenopause symptoms for some women. So certainly one to put on your radar if you haven't thought about kudzu, which most people haven't. It's not a glamorous one. It's got some good information out there about kudzu for cluster headaches in particular. Another classic circulation stimulator is ginkgo, one of the most revered herbs, been used for thousands of years in China. It is a potent circulatory stimulant. If you have ringing in your ears, that along with your headaches, ginkgo is fantastic for that. It's also neuroprotective. It's also anti-inflammatory. This is another one that some people, though, report that ginkgo can exacerbate headaches. So you get people who it really helps and people who it does not.
Do you think that's because the doses are kind of high on the bottles?
It could be. I definitely started with ginkgo and had a horrible experience, but ginkgo has become one of my favorites. I take it in tincture form, so that way you can really like gauge how much you're
More
taking.
like a tea.
Yes, yeah. But a little bit goes a long way. It was very overstimulating when I first started.
Yeah, and I think dose is something always to be aware of, and starting small and building is a way better approach than going with the highest dose recommended and then scaling down, because then you can really find your set point there. But the other thing is that so we have this idea that because an herb is considered to be healthful and helpful, and it's helped a lot of people, that it's going to be helpful for us. And this comes back to knowing yourself. And again, if you are the sort of person who is already overstimulated and your headaches are a mirror to that temperament, then you probably, nothing on this list, maybe the cayenne or something, but really nothing on this list is exactly what you might need. You might move towards what's on my next set of herbs. No, it's not on my next set of herbs, but the more relaxing herbs. These are going to be things like skullcap, lavender,
Things we've talked about before.
chamomile, things we talked about before. Things that are going to hops. Yes, that are going to slow things down, quiet things. They're not bringing more action. And if you have headaches that are also think about it this way. If you have a headache that is kind of an anxious headache, it's coming along with you worrying about everything, your brain's racing, blah, 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 blah. You don't need to add any more gasoline to that fire with ginkgo.
Yeah.
But if you have a headache that also feels foggy and dull, like grief feels, where you're like, I cannot think, the world feels heavy and my head just feels cold and it throbs, then ginkgo might be great. Bringing some life force back to the brain, bringing some energy, bringing some nutrient. So that, again, this comes to knowing yourself and knowing that you might have both types of headaches, and and different. If you've been crying yourself, to sleep at night because you're going through grief, ginkgo might really help you. But the other kind of set of herbs to really think about that are kind of the other side of that coin are going to be your nervous system supporting herbs. Your lavender as essential oil or a tea. Peppermint is in that category too as essential oil or tea. And holy basil, and one of my favorite ones that also, I have so many of these like favorite herbs that I feel like no one's talking about that we just really need to talk about, and one is wood betony. So there's a native plant called wood betony, native in North America, and that's not the one I'm talking about. We're talking about the European native, and this is my all-time favorite herb for tension headaches, stress-related headaches. So again, if you have that headache that's coming with like just the too muchness feeling, where you're like, the lights and my bills and why?
And this is usually sold in a tincture?
Usually in a tincture. You could maybe find a capsule. maybe find it in a bulk herb, but I think tincture is going to be the way to go as far as getting the maximum benefit. Both antispasmodic properties, so helps with like muscle twitching and spasming, and it's a nervous system relaxer. So it's probably my favorite herb for tension headaches in particular. I also love the simple and wonderful chamomile. Chamomile tea is just something to have on hand. It's anti-inflammatory, it's relaxing, it's all the things. Okay, the last set of herbs is just going to be like some anti-inflammatory herbs. And a lot of these herbs, they go beyond just these simple categories. It's just kind of a way for me to organize my thoughts. But the first one that I want to talk about is butterbur, which is really fantastic herb, especially for headaches that are related to high histamine response or headaches that are related to an allergy season. You really have to get butterbur in a standardized extract capsule that has had the paralyzidine alkaloids removed from it. This is not one to grow in your garden and make a tea from. It has these alkaloids called paralyzidine alkaloids. And they are hepatotoxins, so they're toxic to the liver. They have to be removed. But there's a lot of clinical research on butterbur for helping with migraines, and you really need to use it daily to get that benefit.
And it's often with that magnesium riboflavin protocol, feverfew often added to that.
Yeah, which is another great herb. Feverfew is one of the best known herbs probably for headaches, and one that people hear about the most. You can take it as a tea. You can even, it's easy to grow in your garden. You can make compresses out of it. It has pretty profound just kind of anti-inflammatory action as well as some vasodilation action. So again, helping with blood flow, and some help with overactive histamine response. So allergies, allergy-related headaches. That's a great one. And feverfew, people do have some luck with taking that at onset of migraines. So that's a great one to grow in your garden. Butterbur, no. You need to get that in a capsule form. And then our classic friends, we're not going to leave out turmeric and ginger. They're just too darn good. Making a golden milk tea, which you can get pre-made powders and things that have turmeric and ginger, which is black pepper together as a tea, is a wonderful thing to do at the onset of a headache or migraine. These are just some of the most wonderfully anti-inflammatory herbs out there. Ginger especially is wonderful for nausea that might come along with a migraine. We talked about its benefits as an essential oil for cold sensation, nerves, maybe some nerve damage related to headaches and migraines. Can't leave them out. You probably know a lot about them, but they're easy to find and worth having around as a tea or a tincture or even a capsule. And those are my herbs.
I want to say something about the herbs. What we've sort of learned with the whole like rise in cannabis as medicine is that what I had said about nutritional supplements, vitamins and minerals, and deficiencies, well, we're finding these receptor sites in our bodies that are made for phenols from plants. And ginger has how many?
We just looked at the chart. It's long.
Yeah, I think it's like 600 compounds in it. Turmeric has hundreds of compounds. All of these herbs mentioned have specific compounds that your body will know what to do with if it needs them. If it doesn't, you may have a little reaction or something, but it's not to say you couldn't have a deficiency of a compound that an herb supplies.
Yeah, and I just learned this the other day, but all herbs that are rich in essential oils, which many of the herbs that we listed here today, that is one of their main methods of action. Peppermint, lavender, rosemary, even feverfew, turmeric, and ginger, they all have those essential oils, those volatile compounds. And all essential oils have some action on your endocannabinoid system. And there's tons of research out there about what's going on with the endocannabinoid system. We don't actually know a lot about it right now. We're learning more all the time. But for a lot of people, they find CBD to be really helpful for stress-related headaches, especially muscular tension headaches. But there also can be a lot of benefit from some of these other herbs that we've listed for that exact same reason, because they have that volatile oil compound.
Yeah, and if you're thinking, well, maybe I do need deeper sleep, you might consider a CBD product if melatonin isn't for you.
Yeah.
It can be like the perfect thing for some people.
Well, I think is that a wrap? So that is our discussion on headaches and migraines. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned, there's more to come, and I hope that this helps you the old noggin.
Take care of yourself.